After making the best stadium in every US state video, I got a few comments suggesting I do the same for England. A great idea. But the English counties are not as straightforward as the US states. There are different types of counties: historic, ceremonial, metropolitan and non-metropolitan. I've gone with ceremonial because they're the ones I'm most familiar with. But that's not to say I'm that familiar with them. So there is of course the possibility that I did make a couple of errors, just a heads up. With that being said, here is the best stadium in each and every English county, or really just my favourite. Bedfordshire, known for their truck manufacturing industry. I assume Bedford trucks are from here. Although it appeared in a recent video about teams that need a new stadium, I think the slightly ramshackle Kenilworth Road still takes the cake. It's a bit ugly from the outside, cramped on the inside, and as an away supporter you have to walk through someone's house to get into the stadium. But you can't deny that it has plenty of character. Berkshire, the land of confusing pronunciations. Not only is Berkshire spelt Berkshire, but Reading is spelt Reading. Madejski Stadium is sort of the opposite of the last one. Fairly modern facilities and plenty of additional features such as an attached hotel, but less in the way of character. It's just a clean, simple design similar to many stadiums built in the late 90s, early 2000s. Bristol, known for its pirate-related history. Always good to have something in common with Somalia. Ashton Gate is a bit of a mix of the last two. It's an old stadium that's been modernised. It has the best of both worlds, to quote the great philosopher, I forget the name, I'll add it on screen if I can think of it. For whatever reason, I always like to see one stand that towers above the rest. The Lansdowne stand is a recent addition. Lovely ground. Buckinghamshire. I don't know if it counts as a fact, but it's not where the Buckingham Palace is. Stadium MK is home to a team that gets a bit of hate directed towards them because of their controversial history. But their stadium is very easy on the eye. They've used plenty of black on both the exterior and interior, which you don't often see, but it works. Cambridgeshire, home to the Oxford of Cambridgeshire, Cambridge. London Road is a classic British football stadium, with each stand being completely separate and each of them built in a slightly different style. So you're left with a tough choice. Do you want to sit in the stand that's better to sit in, or do you want a view of the stand that's better to look at? What the hell am I talking about? Cheshire, known for their cat manufacturing industry. Warrington has acted as a buffer between Liverpool and Manchester ever since the Manco-Scousand War of '78. It's also prime rugby league territory, so unsurprisingly that's what Halliwell Jones Stadium is used for. Rugby stadiums in England tend to have a lot of terracing. Is that because a lot of the spectators can't fit in a small seat? I'm not trying to be rude, but a rugby fan probably played rugby at some point, and rugby players tend to be quite big. City of London. Seemingly self-explanatory, but I want to point out that it's only a small part of London. It's so small that the best stadium is probably this field. Seriously, it has a population of under 10,000. This is pretty much the closest thing to a stadium. The rest of London is coming up soon. Cornwall, birthplace of the Cornish pasty, a solid foodstuff. But I prefer the food in Pyhamptonshire myself. Menai Field is but a humble rugby stadium. The main stand seems so old that the builders probably spoke Cornish. Nevertheless, it seems like a fantastic place to watch some rugby. Quite pretty. Cumbria. Any signs featuring the name of this county are vandalised almost instantly. Bronson Park is one of the more unusual stadiums in England, largely due to this stand which is not aligned with the rest of the stadium. It's like that because they had plans to move the pitch, which were evidently abandoned. I quite like the old-fashioned stand on the other side though. You don't see too many like that. Derbyshire. All I know is there are no significant football derbies in Derbyshire, which is, why did they even call it that then? Pride Park is a lovely take on a modern style stadium. I love the slanted roof, and just like Stadium MK, the black and white seats just look so good. It's certainly one of the best examples of this kind of stadium. Devon. Ever since the county of Gavin ceased to exist, it's been the only county with a man's first name. Home Park is a great blend of old and new, and I'm a fan of all the green throughout the stadium, for which it gets the nickname the Theatre of Greens, which led Manchester United to name their stadium Theatre of Dreams. They have always looked up to Plymouth Argyle. There is of course the chance that it's the other way around. Dorset. You can't just buy a front door without a back door. Vitality Stadium is a simple, no-nonsense stadium that's pretty much exactly the same on all four sites. The one complaint would be that it's too small for its club, but that's better than it being the other way around, at least for the club's self-esteem. Durham. They have a nice castle. The Darlington Arena is notorious for being a bit of a white elephant. It probably wasn't a good sign that they didn't even come close to selling out the first game at the stadium. It's an okay stadium, but it's not the most interesting design. East Riding of Yorkshire. I like that name. It obviously dates back to before cars were introduced to Yorkshire in the late 70s. Although MKM Stadium has a nice sleek exterior, it's all about the inside for me. It has that asymmetrical design, and those black, white and amber seats look stunning. A bit of a theme developing. East Sussex, the home of PewDiePie. There, I gave you a shout out, now please reciprocate. It's only fair. The Amex is probably the best stadium on England's south coast. That's a bit of a specific accolade, but still. I love the way that slanted roof almost slopes all the way down to the ground at either end. The interior is just as nice. There are some seagulls that are the opposite of most seagulls. You'll be sitting on them rather than them well, you get where I'm going. Essex, from what I can gather, is the birthplace of fake tan. There's nothing fake about Colchester Community Stadium though. It's as straightforward as it gets. There are so many other stadiums in the country with the exact same design. But it does the job and it's cost effective, and when it's funded by the taxpayer, that's about all you can ask for. Gloucestershire. I think Hagrid is from here. Kingsholm Stadium is a rugby ground with a bit of an interesting look to it, particularly the terrace running along the northern side of the ground that sort of bends into the field. The stands have quite a few pillars obstructing the spectator's view, but overall it seems like a solid venue. Greater London, the stadium capital of the world amongst other things. Now this one will divide the traditionalists from the modernists, I guess. But how can I not choose Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? It's one of the best stadiums in the world. There are those that say it's just a soulless bowl. Well, I disagree. For starters, it's technically not a bowl, but also nothing says soul like a big golden cockerel. And on top of that, if your club is getting absolutely hammered, you can always visit the on-site microbrewery so you can follow in their footsteps. Greater Manchester, birthplace of the man with the world's roundest head. If you know, you know. I'm sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Do I choose new or old? Amenities or character? Cleanliness or capacity? Blue or red? I have to go with Etihad Stadium. There's just less negative things to say about it. I love that roof, and it's by all accounts just a much more pleasant experience, as you'd expect given the age difference. But let me just say, if Old Trafford was given a complete refurbishment, it would be my choice. Hampshire. None of this newfangled Hampshire they have across the pond. Although there is a decent football stadium in Southampton, I'm gonna give it to the Ageas Bowl, or the Rose Bowl as it's also known. I like the setting with the forest in the backdrop. There's an attached Hilton hotel that has views of the ground. And most importantly, there's a Shane Warne stand, because not only did he play first-class cricket for the great state of Victoria, but Hampshire as well. Herefordshire, known for their breed of cattle which happen to be quite prevalent in the great state of Victoria. I see them all the time. Edgar Street is a little ramshackle at the moment, but that's not always bad. It's like taking a step back in time. I do kinda like the way the two tiers of the Len Weston stand are stacked directly on top of each other. That's due to the road that it backs onto. Hertfordshire. There's a town here called Stevenage that always makes me chuckle for some reason. Vicarage Road is the stadium that stands out from the crowd, mainly due to the loud colour scheme on the inside, but also the fact that it has a stand named after Elton John, who used to own the club. Don't hold that against it though, it's still a decent little ground. Isle of Wight. It's an island. That's unique as far as counties go. St George's Park is the home of the Isle of Wight national team. Yes, they have a national team. And it's about what you'd expect really, as basic as it gets. It is however situated in a fairly serene setting, I guess. Kent. What did you call me? The Spitfire ground has a very old-fashioned look to it. Some of the stands sort of look like old plantation homes. But the ground is most known for the lime tree that used to be located within the playing area. If you hit it, it's a 6. If your head hits it while running back for the catch, well, you get knocked the out. Unfortunately, that one died of tree rabies, I guess, but a new one was planted just outside the boundary. It's a lovely place to watch some cricket. Lancashire, Hot Pot. Deepdale Stadium is like the metallic version of Stadio Luigi Ferraris. Perhaps my favourite Italian stadium. It also claims to be the world's oldest continuously operational football stadium, which is impressive if true. It looks great, and those depictions of some of the club legends on the seats is a nice touch. Leicestershire. Everyone knows of Red Leicester, but Stilton is also from Leicestershire, and that's a top-notch cheese. Welford Road, unlike its football counterpart, is a one-of-a-kind stadium. Not that there's anything extraordinary about it, but it just has character. I particularly like the Eastern Stand, it reminds me of Brentford Stadium. It's also worth mentioning that it's the largest purpose-built club rugby stadium in England. Lincolnshire. Sausage. Sincil Bank Stadium. Surprisingly, that's not a sponsor's name. Anyway, it's not the prettiest of grounds, particularly the exterior, which includes a very ugly shade of green, but it does offer a view of something quite pretty. The Lincoln Cathedral, especially at night time when it's lit up. On the inside, the stadium does actually look okay. Not a bad little ground. Merseyside. Home of the world's most famous band. And I'm fairly sure the Beatles were from Liverpool as well. Even though I do like the look of Goodison Park, especially the old school interior, it just can't compete with the might of Anfield. The main stand has one of the best looking exteriors in the world. A modern design that doesn't upset the purists. The rest of the stadium is kind of straightforward by comparison, but still pretty good. Narnia. Some crazy stuff goes on in this county. Very little in the way of stadiums though, unfortunately. Norfolk. North of Suffolk. Carrow Road, just like Vicarage Road, really jumps out at you with those vibrant yellow and green seats. Another distinctive aspect is the eastern corner of the stadium. That basically goes from the field straight into a car park for a hotel that overlooks the field. And it's a small detail, I know, but I love the old-fashioned gable with a clock on it. North Yorkshire. They're not like the softies down in the south of Yorkshire. It was a bit of a toss-up, but I've gone with North Marine Road, the second home of the Yorkshire cricket team. To be honest, in terms of amenities, it's lackluster, but it's over 170 years old. And I don't mind the old-fashioned look. I'd imagine this is what a typical English Test cricket ground looked like 50 or so years ago. Northamptonshire, home to the home of British motorsport, Silverstone. But we're not including tracks, so Franklin's Gardens it is. It has a very interesting history. It started out as what was basically a zoo and a sports complex combined. Nowadays it's just a rugby stadium, but one of the better ones in England for sure. Northumberland. It's almost Scotland, so here they deep fry almost everything. Shielfeld Park is just a few miles from Scotland. And although the Speedway might be the main attraction, it is also home to the Berwick Rangers, who actually play in the Scottish Football League system. The only club from England to do so, if I'm not mistaken. Nottinghamshire, home of Robin Hood. I thought it was another chance to choose a cricket ground, but then I remembered that I'm quite fond of City Ground, and Australian cricket fans don't have fond memories of Trent Bridge. It's a nice location by the River Trent, and I like the extensive use of that lovely shade of red throughout the stadium. Oxfordshire, home to the Cambridge of Oxfordshire, Oxford. Kassam Stadium. Now this would have been ideal at the last location right by the river. Instead, the stadium's three-sidedness leaves you with a view of the car park, which I suppose if you're a car person you can check out some of the Hyundais and Vauxhalls, but the stadium's three sides are more than adequate for now. Rutland, notoriously bad roads. Also, besides the City of London, it has the smallest population of around 40,000. And Oakham Cricket Ground is an accurate reflection of those statistics. I couldn't even find the capacity, but I'd say it's only slightly more than one man and his dog. Nice little ground though. Shropshire. Something I learnt about Shropshire is that the world's first iron bridge was built in a Shropshire town called Ironbridge. Now what are the chances of that happening? New Meadow isn't going to win any design awards, it's quite basic. But one quirky aspect is that they occasionally set up temporary seating that fills in the corners. Somerset. Well, since I mentioned Red Leicester and Stilton, I guess I have to mention that Somerset is the birthplace of cheddar cheese. I'm going to go with the County Cricket Ground, partially because a few years ago when the wicket was a Bunsen burner, they nicknamed the ground Cyderabad, which is brilliant. Although if you don't know much about cricket or this part of England, you probably have no clue what any of that meant. South Yorkshire. Not like the unsophisticated chavs up in North Yorkshire. There's a lot to choose from, so this was a fairly difficult decision. But rather than having to choose between the red and blues of Sheffield, I've gone for New York Stadium, which is a bit of a different take on the often boring single-tiered bowl stadiums. It has a rather nice modern exterior and a roof that looks like a staircase. New York City could certainly use a stadium like this. Staffordshire. Little dog, doggy, dog, dog, doggy, dog, dog, dog. Pirelli Stadium has a very familiar design, with its combination of a brick and a metallic cladding to make up the facade of each stand. But most stadiums that look like this and were built in the 21st century probably don't have terraces on 3 out of the 4 sides, which is no bad thing. As they say, sitting is worse than smoking. No, that can't be true. Sitting is the new smoking, that's it. Still not exactly true. Suffolk. Suff of Norfolk. Portman Road is one of the better examples in my opinion of mixing old and new architectural styles. You can clearly see that some stands were built a lot earlier than others. One dates back to the 50s. But it's not jarring at all. It just works well together nicely, inside and out. Surrey. It's where the Magna Carta was signed. which if I'm not mistaken got rid of the death penalty for sneezing in public. Kingfield Stadium is a little unusual, being made up of mostly very basic small stands. But to the south, they've obviously saved up and bought themselves a nice modern grandstand. Which does make the stadium a little lopsided, but it really tidies up the place. Tyne and Wear. 2 rivers for the price of 1. And it actually has 2 very similar lopsided stadiums within its borders. However, it has to go to St James's Park. Half of it is quite basic, nothing you haven't seen before, but then the other side is twice the size, and that huge translucent roof that covers it is glorious. I believe it's the biggest of its kind. Warwickshire, literally the home of rugby. Oh, Shakespeare was from here as well. But as far as stadiums go, it's slim pickings. So why not go with the rugby school itself? Not much in the way of seating, but very picturesque. Interestingly, not only did rugby begin here, but the inventor of Australian rules football studied here. I guess they had a course on creating football codes. West Midlands, home of the Warwickshire County Cricket Club, oddly enough. Quite a few county cricket clubs play in different counties. Probably has something to do with the historic counties I mentioned earlier. I'm giving it to Villa Park. It's a lot of people's ideal football stadium, with its classic design including a grand brick entrance, 4 individual stands more or less, and its elegant interior done up in the club's famous colours. You can see why it's popular. West Sussex, where Rolls Royces are made. The People's Pension Stadium seems like a nice place to watch football, although it does have its shortcomings. Particularly the eastern stand, which basically has a tent for a roof. Well, it's more like one of those gazebos you see at a farmer's market. It's an okay ground, but certainly not the Rolls Royce of stadiums. Well, West Sussex might have Rolls Royce, but West Yorkshire is known for its rhubarb production. I was tempted to go for one of the Siamese twins in Leeds or Allen Road, or maybe even Valley Parade, but I think the unique design of John Smith Stadium gets it over the line. Not just the design though, it's also in much better condition than its Leeds and Bradford counterparts. Nice to have that wooded hill in the backdrop as well. Wiltshire. I'm sure it's a fine county, but I just hope their stadiums are a step up from their non-sport related architecture. And although Stonehenge has a lovely stone exterior, County Ground puts it to shame. Proper roofs on 3 out of 4 stands, one of which is a cantilever roof, whereas all of the roofs at Stonehenge are the old-fashioned type with pillars holding it up. County Ground has ergonomic seating, Stonehenge just has some rocks. I don't know why it's so famous. We end with Worcestershire, everybody's favourite name to mispronounce in a humorous manner. Of course, that is when referring to the source, because not many people outside of England talk about the county itself. It was a tough choice to overlook Sixways Stadium, but I'm a sucker for a picturesque cricket ground, and New Road is exactly that, with the beautiful St Andrew's spire in the backdrop. And one bonus is that quite often it can double as a swimming pool, because the entire ground is prone to flooding, being located right by the River Severn. And that's it for today's video. Did I make any major errors? Probably. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.